Scientists at the University of South Wales in Sydney, Australia, have discovered the purpose of a 3,700-year-old clay tablet.
For days, the AI processed numbers, searching through ancient markings thought to be little more than practice notes. Its subject was Plimpton 322, a 3,700-year-old tablet from Babylon.
Plimpton 322 is arguably the most interesting, most sophisticated mathematical document from the ancient world. It tells us that past civilizations understood mathematics a lot better than we thought.
But when the analysis ended, it revealed something no one expected. The tablet contained a flawless system of mathematics, knowledge that should not have existed for another 1,500 years. That discovery alone was unsettling. But what came next was worse. Other Babylonian tablets carried messages of famine, death, and kingdoms destined to fall. The mystery of a clay tablet. Small enough to fit in your hand, yet powerful enough to change history, this clay fragment is no ordinary relic. For over a century, it sat unnoticed in the archives of Columbia University, and at just 5 inches wide and 3.5 inches tall, it hardly looks remarkable. Yet today, it is known worldwide as Plimpton 322. The story of how it surfaced begins in the early 1900s, in the sun-baked earth of modern-day Iraq. Near the ruins of the Sumerian city of Larsa, the unusual discovery was made by Edgar Banks. Banks was not only an archaeologist, but also a diplomat and an adventurer. He was the type of man whose exploits later inspired the fictional character Indiana Jones. Still, even he did not realize the weight of what he had found. The clay fragment was covered in cuneiform script, which is one of the earliest writing systems in human history. To write them, ancient scribes would press a reed stylus into wet clay. This left wedge-shaped marks that carried their messages through time. However, what Banks unearthed was different. This was not a royal decree, nor a myth, nor a temple record. Instead, the tablet displayed numbers which were arranged neatly in 4 columns and 15 rows. For decades, scholars tried to explain it. Some believed it was a simple aid for teachers, a sheet of practice problems meant for students learning basic math. Others thought it was an accounting record, a scribe's tool for tracking trade goods. There were also some that argued it was incomplete, with a missing left section that might hold the key to its true purpose. The tablet's landscape orientation and the continuation of lines onto its blank reverse only deepened the puzzle. Could it have been part of a larger work, meant to continue on the back? Yet no one could agree. Was this a classroom tool or a groundbreaking mathematical discovery? Now, the numbers themselves were written in their base 60 system, which is known as sexagesimal. This same system still shapes our lives today. It is the reason why we have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. For its time, however, it was very advanced. Yet even with this knowledge, experts concluded the tablet was little more than a minor relic of ancient arithmetic. But there was a problem. Careful eyes noticed the numbers were not random. They followed patterns, ordered in a progression that felt too deliberate to be explained away. Why would a simple practice sheet be arranged with such precision? Why would an ordinary accounting ledger hold a hidden structure that hinted at something deeper? For many years, these questions were ignored. Most historians moved on, content with their safe explanations. But a handful of mathematicians kept looking, uneasy with the idea that Plimpton 322 could be dismissed so easily. They sensed that the official story did not match the evidence. Was it possible that this tablet held knowledge far beyond what scholars had assumed? Could the Babylonians, nearly 4,000 years ago, have understood concepts that would not reappear until the time of Greek mathematics? If so, then the meaning of Plimpton 322 was far more unsettling than anyone had dared to imagine. The numbers that changed what we know about Babylon. The secret of Plimpton 322 did not lie in words, but in numbers. The numbers on its surface were not random. They mapped out the sides of right-angled triangles, the same principle we now know as the Pythagorean theorem. Yet the tablet was written more than 1,000 years before Pythagoras was even born. How could the Babylonians have grasped this? And why would they carefully record such an extensive list of what we now call Pythagorean triples? Some of the entries were not small or simple. They described massive, highly accurate triangles that would have been almost impossible to identify by chance. One line even pointed to a triangle with sides measuring 12,079 and 13,500. The scale and precision made it clear that this was no accident. It raised the question, what purpose did it serve? For generations, the tablet's meaning slipped through the hands of scholars. Its numbers remained a shadow of some forgotten logic, as if it carried knowledge that no one alive could fully decode. It was there, preserved in clay, waiting for something humanity had not yet invented. That turning point came in the modern age. With computing power capable of breaking patterns the human mind might miss, artificial intelligence was finally applied to the puzzle. This new approach unlocked the structure behind the numbers and revealed the truth. What had once been dismissed as a fragment of arithmetic turned into evidence of advanced mathematical design. And what AI uncovered left experts unsettled, for it showed the Babylonians knew far more than history had ever allowed us to believe. Math, power, and the Babylonian Empire. What kind of world could leave behind a clay tablet that still unsettles us after nearly 4 millennia? To understand it, we have to step back into the Babylonian Empire. Babylon at the time was more than a city. It was a hub of power in Mesopotamia, with kings ruling from grand palaces built along the banks of the Euphrates River. The rulers of Babylon saw knowledge as power. They employed scholars who studied the movements of the planets and stars. These scholars then recorded their findings on clay tablets. The Babylonians linked the heavens to human destiny. They believed that shifts in the skies could predict events on Earth. What looks to us like science was, for them, both astronomy and prophecy. Mathematics formed the backbone of this world. The Babylonians used a number system based on 60, which is why today we divide an hour into 60 minutes and a circle into 360 degrees. Clay tablets were filled with calculations from accounting records of crops to advanced geometry. Their methods allowed them to solve complex equations long before such concepts appeared in Greece. They measured land, planned irrigation, and even tracked lunar cycles with accuracy. But why would such a civilization carve numbers and shapes into a small slab of clay like the one we now know as Plimpton 322? The answer lies in their way of blending practical needs with a desire for order. To build a city of temples and canals, they required precise mathematics. Triangles and ratios helped them design structures that stood the test of time. Farmers depended on these calculations to divide land fairly. Builders, on the other hand, relied on them to raise walls that would not collapse. The tablet was not a curiosity to them. It was a tool, one that reflected both their scientific skill and their need for stability. Culture in Babylon was shaped by its gods, but also by its pursuit of knowledge. Education centered around scribal schools, where boys spent years learning cuneiform script and mastering arithmetic. These students copied problems onto clay as they practiced calculations that prepared them for work in administration, trade, or temple service. The reach of Babylonian science went far beyond its own borders. Their astronomical records influenced later civilizations. This included the Greeks, who built on Babylonian knowledge when shaping their own ideas of geometry and the cosmos. The architectural style of ziggurats would inspire later cultures to build monumental structures pointing skyward. Even today, when mathematicians examine Plimpton 322, they find methods that seem strangely modern. So when we look at a tablet like this, we are not only reading ancient numbers, we are peering into a civilization that used mathematics as a language to connect earth and sky, to organize society, and to define power. The Babylonians did not separate science from daily life. For them, numbers carried weight, shaping the walls around them and guiding their vision of the universe. The truth, hidden in Plimpton 322. A scan of the ancient tablet turned into one of the most surprising revelations in mathematics. Researchers fed a high-resolution scan of the Plimpton 322 into artificial intelligence. This was not a machine loaded with assumptions about history or mathematics. It was built to search for patterns across massive data sets, uncovering connections invisible to the human eye. Line by line, wedge by wedge, even the smallest crack in the clay was examined. The results changed everything. The AI confirmed that the tablet was indeed about triangles, but it went far beyond what scholars had once believed. Instead of being a scattered collection of exercises, it revealed itself as a trigonometric table. At first, that may sound like a flashback to school math lessons, filled with circles, angles, and numbers that stretch on forever. But what this tablet revealed was nothing like the trigonometry credited to the Greeks in the 2nd century before Christ. Greek trigonometry was useful, but it relied on approximations. Think of pi, a number that cannot be written down completely and forces us to work with endless decimals. Useful, yes, but always slightly off. The Babylonians, however, had gone in a completely different direction. Their system was not based on angles, but on exact ratios. Using their base 60 number system, they created the only perfectly accurate trigonometric table known to history. No rounding, no errors, just precision carved into clay. Now imagine standing before a ziggurat, a massive pyramid of stone climbing step by step into the sky. If you were an ancient builder tasked with constructing one, you needed the slope of each wall to be flawless. Any small mistake repeated level after level could lead to disaster. With Greek methods, even the best calculations would carry tiny errors that could build up. With the Babylonian method preserved on Plimpton 322, those slopes could be calculated with absolute accuracy every single time. The tablet held 15 rows, and the AI showed that each one described a right-angled triangle. The sequence moved in perfect order, with the slopes decreasing steadily. This was not a random record. It was a master table, a blueprint for engineers, builders, and surveyors. It allowed them to design with confidence, using mathematics centuries ahead of what the rest of the world would one day call advanced. For generations, scholars had wondered why such a tablet existed. Was it simply a teaching tool, a set of problems for young scribes to practice on? The AI's findings closed that door. This was no exercise in rote learning. It was a powerful instrument, created with a purpose, a piece of technology in its own way, as important as any machine we use today. What the AI uncovered was not just a translation. It was the decoding of a science long forgotten. The Babylonians were not limited to the simple arithmetic often assumed of them. Over 1,500 years before the Greeks, they had developed a system of mathematics that was not only advanced, but in some respects, superior to what followed. Perfect slopes, flawless calculations, and an elegance that feels almost unsettling in its precision. And with that discovery came a question that casts a shadow even now. If an empire so ancient possessed a system more exact than ours, what else might they have known that remains hidden in clay, waiting to be unlocked? History's greatest intellectual disappearance. Plimpton 322 carries a secret message that worries historians. The unsettling part is not that it describes the end of humanity, but that it exposes how much of our past has been taught incorrectly. We were always told knowledge advanced in a clean line, from Babylonians to Egyptians, then to the Greeks, the Romans, and finally to us. But this tablet shows something else. It points to a moment of extraordinary brilliance in the ancient world that somehow vanished, leaving a hole in history. Imagine what that means. For thousands of years, this advanced knowledge disappeared, and it only returned in fragments when the Greeks rediscovered it. Yet the scale of what was lost is almost impossible to grasp. It is as if blueprints for interstellar travel had been discovered hidden in a medieval fortress. That is the scale of what this tablet represents. It does not fit where it was found, and yet it cannot be denied. So the question becomes, what could the Babylonians have done with such perfect mathematics? This was not just about measuring bricks or stacking stones. They were working with trigonometry, a language that connects to the very structure of the universe. Trigonometry allows us to calculate the distance between stars, design machines that function with precision, and measure landscapes across the Earth itself. Could they have mapped the planet with a precision far beyond their time? Could they have calculated movements of the heavens with the accuracy of modern computers? These questions no longer sound impossible once you consider what the tablet reveals. Even the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, known as one of the Seven Wonders, take on a new meaning. What if they were not only a breathtaking display of plants and waterworks, but a feat of design made possible by mathematics so advanced it would not appear again for centuries? This single artifact forces us to rethink the limits of ancient civilizations. It was not a steady climb toward knowledge, but a rise, a collapse, and then a rediscovery. The disturbing truth is that our history may be filled with peaks of genius lost to time, with Plimpton 322 offering only one surviving trace of a brilliance that should never have existed in that age. Ahead of its time. Modern analysis with artificial intelligence revealed that the numbers carved into the Plimpton 322 clay surface are not primitive records, but evidence of a highly advanced form of mathematics, and this discovery hints at something far greater. Experts now believe the tablet may not have been a standalone creation. Instead, it could be a single surviving fragment from an entire collection of scientific work. If true, then much of Babylonian brilliance has been lost forever. That is where the real fear begins. It proves that humanity is not guaranteed progress. Civilizations can hold extraordinary knowledge, only to watch it vanish through war, disaster, or the slow erosion of time. So the question is, could there be other tablets still buried beneath the sands of Iraq? If one artifact carried a flawless form of trigonometry, what might the others contain? Blueprints for devices we have yet to invent? Records of astronomical events charted with impossible precision? Perhaps even a deeper grasp of physics than we have today. The thought of such knowledge being erased from memory is almost impossible to grasp. For centuries, the Babylonians were painted as a people just beginning to explore mathematics and science. Yet Plimpton 322 forces a different picture. It suggests they may have reached achievements that rival or even surpass modern efforts. Rather than standing at the start of a journey, they might have already arrived at places we still strive to reach, which leads to the most disturbing question of all. If they held such power in their hands, how could it all simply vanish? Secrets lost in Babylon's fall. How can a society capable of advanced mathematics suddenly vanish from history? That question has bothered experts for years. The official explanation, the one passed down through textbooks, points to war and destruction. Babylon was never free from conflict. It rose to power, only to be conquered by the Hittites, later by the Assyrians, and finally absorbed into the Persian Empire. Each invasion left scars. Cities were burned and temples were toppled. Libraries filled with clay tablets were reduced to ash. Knowledge in Babylon was never shared widely. It was kept within a small circle of scribes and priests. These individuals guarded their secrets carefully, and if they were killed or displaced during war, their knowledge could vanish in an instant. The trigonometry inscribed on Plimpton 322 may have been one of those secrets. If only a select few knew how to read and apply it, then its disappearance becomes easier to understand. Once they were gone, the method could have disappeared with them. The explanation seems simple, even logical, but is it really that simple? Could something so advanced be wiped out so cleanly? Historians are beginning to question whether this explanation holds. After all, mathematics of this level does not appear out of nowhere. Did Babylon suddenly master concepts that would not resurface again until Greek thinkers over 1,000 years later? Or is there a missing piece to the puzzle? The discovery of this tablet suggests that history may not be a straight path of progress. Instead, it may rise and fall, with knowledge gained in one era and lost in another. That possibility unsettles our understanding of how civilizations grow. If one society could lose such advanced understanding, how many other breakthroughs might have disappeared without leaving a trace? And then comes the most unsettling idea of all. The tablet may not only reshape what we think we know about Babylon, it raises the possibility that the Babylonians themselves were not the original creators of this knowledge. What if they had inherited it? What if the math on the tablet belonged to a culture far older, one that has vanished completely from the record? The discovery does more than rewrite history. It pushes us to question whether entire chapters of human knowledge have been erased, and it leaves us to wonder who first unlocked these secrets and why they disappeared. The Babylonian Tablet of Doom. Now, away from Plimpton 322, let us turn our attention to something even more unsettling. Imagine uncovering a tablet, silent for thousands of years, only for it to reveal predictions of death, famine, and collapse. That is exactly what researchers faced when artificial intelligence managed to decode a collection of Babylonian tablets dating back nearly 4,000 years. What they found was not merely ancient scribbles, but terrifying warnings of disasters tied to the skies above. These clay tablets, discovered more than a century ago in what is now Iraq, had sat in museum collections for decades. Although they entered the British Museum between the years 1892 and 1914, their true meaning remained hidden. Only with the help of advanced tools was the cuneiform text fully translated, and when it was, the results were startling. The inscriptions contained 61 predictions, each tied to astronomical events, especially lunar eclipses, which the Babylonians viewed with dread. Why eclipses? To the Babylonians, the moon held extraordinary importance. They believed that unusual changes in the night sky were not coincidences, but coded warnings from the gods. An eclipse, in particular, was seen as a signal of destruction. One translated omen spelled it out directly. If the eclipse appeared and cleared suddenly, then a king would die and a powerful land would fall. Such messages were not taken lightly, especially in a society where kingship was seen as divinely chosen. The omens did not stop at royal deaths. They spoke of calamities that would tear through cities and fields alike. One chilling line declared that in spring, a swarm of locusts would strike the land's crops, leaving famine in its wake. Another warned of rain and floodwaters, unleashed by the god Adad, devastating threshing floors and washing away the harvest. Armies were also foretold in the texts. Mentions of Gutian and Elamite forces appear, suggesting that war and invasion were expected to follow certain celestial signs. Even more grim were the passages predicting social collapse. A tablet described revolts that would tear down walls and destroy cities. Another claimed that if a king who was famous perished, his son, not yet chosen, would seize power. What would follow, the text said, was war, desolation, and the emptying of lands once filled with people. Could this have been a coded memory of real struggles witnessed by those who lived under the rule of the Babylonian Empire? Or was it a fearful projection written to explain the chaos of the skies? The origins of the tablets point to Sippar, a thriving city during the Babylonian era. Dating from around 1894 to 1595 BC, they represent some of the earliest known compendiums of lunar eclipse omens. Researchers now believe the ancient scholars may have drawn on past experiences to give weight to these predictions. If famine or war followed an eclipse once, then surely it would again. Decoding the script was no small task. Cuneiform, which means wedge-shaped, was created by pressing a reed stylus into wet clay. These symbols carried multiple languages, including Sumerian, Akkadian, and Old Persian. To modern eyes, they look like rows of angled marks, but to the Babylonians, they were the language of gods and kings. That these symbols survived nearly 4,000 years, only to be translated with the aid of artificial intelligence adds to the unease surrounding their content. As modern researchers pieced together the words, it became clear that the Babylonians saw the heavens as a warning system. They believed events in the sky mirrored the fortunes of those on earth. If the moon darkened, kings trembled. If the eclipse shifted strangely, armies prepared for war. Could it be that in their eyes, survival depended on reading the sky correctly? And if they were right once, how much of what they predicted still casts a shadow over our world today? Ancient predictions of collapse. If the first translations revealed warnings of famine, invasion, and rebellion, what came next was even more alarming. The tablets did not only predict environmental disasters, they spoke of horrors that struck at the very core of society. One chilling omen declared that lions would go on a rampage, cutting off the exits from cities. Another warned that dogs would turn mad, attacking and even devouring people. To the Babylonians, such images were not exaggerations, but terrifying possibilities that could unfold if the heavens signaled unrest. The texts even extended into personal tragedy. Pregnant women, the tablets said, would fail to bring their unborn children to term. Families would be broken before new life could even begin. The omens also described famine so severe that desperate parents would trade their infants for silver. Such details are not only disturbing but also raise a question. Were these simply metaphors for chaos, or did they come from real memories of suffering? Another striking prediction spoke of a king's son killing his father to seize the throne. For the Babylonians, royal succession was not just about politics. It was tied directly to the gods and the order of the world. A son turning on his father would have been the ultimate sign of collapse. The texts even described what would follow: lands depopulated, cities turned into desolation, and power slipping away. One cannot help but wonder whether such writings were reflections of real dynastic struggles, remembered and carved into clay for future generations to fear. Warnings, written in the stars. Researchers point out that kings of Babylon did not simply accept these omens at face value. If a tablet predicted the death of a ruler, priests would perform additional checks. They practiced extispicy, which meant inspecting the entrails of animals to seek signs of fate. If the reading confirmed danger, rituals would be carried out in hopes of canceling the omen. In extreme cases, the Babylonians even went so far as to appoint substitute kings. These stand-ins were placed on the throne temporarily, bearing the god's wrath so that the true ruler might survive. It is a chilling thought. Men chosen to die in place of kings, sacrificed for the sake of survival. Despite these rituals, history does suggest that some omens matched real events. One example comes from the death of King Hammurabi in 1750 BC. He died at about 60 years old, and though his dynasty lasted another century and a half, his passing marked the slow decline of the empire he had built. The tablets had warned that a famous king would perish, followed by desolation and loss of power. Could this connection be coincidence, or were the Babylonians truly seeing patterns between the sky and the earth below? The researchers believe that the origins of many of the omens may have come from real experiences. If an eclipse was once followed by a flood, then future eclipses could be linked to similar disasters. Still, they also admit that much of the interpretation was speculative. To the Babylonians, events in the sky were never meaningless. They were warnings carefully placed by the gods, messages that demanded to be read. That belief made every shadow on the moon a potential prophecy of destruction. The decoded tablets reveal how deeply the Babylonians connected cosmic events to their own survival. Their kings lived under constant threat, convinced that the heavens might decide their fate at any moment. For us, the translations provide more than history. They show how fear of the unknown shaped entire empires. But the question still remains: if they once looked to the skies and saw disaster, what should we make of their warnings now that they have been unlocked once more? If you have enjoyed uncovering this forgotten piece of history, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more untold stories from our ancient world.